Captain Peter Cutsey, Raw Data Part 2, Kabul, VOR DME runway 29. We're established on the 102 radio at 1000, QNH 1004. We are doing the VOR DME approach as we discussed before. And if you look at the nav display, MIBI, and here it is on the chart, MIBI, and here it is here. So 23.9 DME, and MIBI is at 20 DME, raw data. So we are 3.9 nautical miles from MIBI. What I'd like to do is switch back and forth with the captain flying in the map mode and the first officer who is pilot monitoring today to use the VOR center mode for raw data. So here we are, the VOR center mode for raw data. That's heading up, of course. The course set on the MCP was 282. All right. And this is our DME for VOR 1, VOR 2, DME 23.9. So all of this is raw data information. So some airlines dictate in their SOPs that pilot monitoring will use the raw data to back up and confirm the accuracy of the map for the pilot flying. I think it's a good idea. In this case, we can do it because we're using a nav aid, a VOR, or if we were using a localizer, the RNAV overlies that particular approach, so you can use a raw data check on the pilot monitoring side. All right, so let's go back here, and we've set up on the fixed page 2 nautical miles from Kimo, which is top of descent. So that's it here on the screen. You can see top of descent. So 2 nautical miles from that, on that little arc here, we'll configure for landing. And right now we are at flaps 5, and we are at flap 5 speed. We're going to use flaps 30 for landing flap today, and VREF 30 plus 5 will be 151 knots. There's a VREF set here. Minimum today for this approach, we're going to use 8480 because our performance data from our engineering department have stipulated that we are okay for a missed approach climb gradient, of 290 feet per nautical mile. So therefore, this 8480 will be our minimum, onto which we'll add 50 feet, because our company SOPs state that we should do that. Most companies do that. In any case, we'll just, the map presentation is wandering a wee bit. All right, so we'll do that, and 8530 set. Okay, so let's go back to a dynamic mode, which we are in now, and we will just zoom back a little bit so that we can see what's happening. So before we get to top of descent, let's just review the basically 10 items that missed approach, or I should say the MDA set, and we're going to round it up to 8600 in the altitude window, RNP, AMP, and VNAV path. Those are the first 3. The next, gear down, flaps 15, speed brakes armed. And then the next, we'll open the speed window, which it is, and set flaps 15 speed. And then once we start our descent, we'll select landing flap and select VREF 30 plus 5 knots, which today will be 151 knots. So we are getting a reminder now to reset MCP altitude. So let's go ahead and do that right now. And we're going to set it to 8,600 as we discussed. Round it up, which is fine. RMP, AMP checks, we're within our tolerance, and we're in VNAV path. So as we get to the top of descent, we've completed those items, then we can lower the gear and the flaps 15. So important items through this briefing will be to compare raw data with the program data that we have here in front of us. There's our DME, which is raw data, by the way. And if we just quickly go across and have a look at the first officers, who is the pilot monitoring, we're on the radio. And we're coming up to top of descent. So let's just change the scale a wee bit here so we can get a better idea of what we're doing. There we are now, gear down, flap 15, and speed brakes armed. And we'll go up and set the flap 15 speed. There's the vertical path on the nav display, and there is the NPS. Now we can select flaps 30, select VRF 30 plus 5, and we decided that was going to be 151 knots, and then do the landing check. Once we're 300 feet below the missed approach altitude, we can set it. So we are now commencing our descent, and we would complete the landing checklist. And before we forget, we'll go up and set the missed approach altitude of flight level 180. Set. Go across to the first officer, pilot monitoring, nav display. Right on track. Over to the rate of descent, just what we discussed before, leaving 10,000 per minimum, 1,000 feet per minute. We have discussed that before in our briefing. And back to the pilot flying, which happens to be the captain in this case, and there is what we're looking at. So we are 1,000 feet to level off. I'm going to pause here and just go up and change the time so that we can better see the approach. We'll set it up in the night scene so we can better see the approach as we get closer. So let's have a view outside. You can see the airport at the top of the screen. All right, so as we approach minimum, we'll disconnect all the FDS systems and then fly the airplane manually. So we're right on path, and we've got 400 feet to go to approaching minimum, and looking good. Let's pause and go over to the first officer side, who is the pilot monitoring today. And there's the rate of descent that we briefed on and we're talking about. And here's the minimum coming up. And here's our lateral track. Looking good. This will end part 2. And in part 3, we'll carry out a missed approach procedure. See you in the next video.